Hey, you ready to get your mind blown? You know how we obsess over game engines, right? We spend hours speculating about how these new features are going to bring amazing new games. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why are we so hyped up on game engines in the first place and not the game? Well, maybe it's because game engines are marketing trash. That's right, folks. Game engines are just another avenue for developers to sell you on their games. Don't believe me? I've worked in game dev marketing, in game development, and I'm currently a product manager on tools for games. So buckle up, I'm gonna reveal some of the secrets behind game engines and how they use it to sell you on stuff that isn't even ready for the prime time. In the late 80s and early 90s, the thought of a game engine was never in the consumer's mind, and for good reason. The only tools you could purchase at a local software store for making games was just a basic C compiler. So you would spend lots of effort building low-level systems like graphics, sound, and movement before you could even prototype the gameplay. Publishers, who were usually footing the bill, would demand your game come out by a specific date. And the combination of creating code and then creating a game meant that many companies' first games were pretty mediocre. Time is money, and the faster you can ship a game, the longer your studio stays open. So there was no use in reinventing the sound, movement, graphics, and status bar routines when you've already coded these up. That's right, we're talking about asset flipping for code. Code flipping? Yeah, whatever, let's do it. This practice of code reuse, code flipping, happened all the time at Volition, a game studio I used to work for in the past. Saints Row 2 was an open-world, third-person action game set in an urban dense city. Can't believe I remember all those words. Today we just call these open-world games. Now, open-world games present a huge technical challenge as you need to constantly stream in characters, vehicles, and buildings dynamically as the player maneuvers around the city. This streaming code is the lifeblood of any open-world game and determines how detailed you can make your city. So when we moved on to Saints Row 3, we sure as hell used that open-world streaming code from the previous game. But you might not know this because if you look at the Wikipedia entry for the game, it'll just tell you that it's built off the Core Technology Group engine. Let me tell you, Core Technology Group was just the name of the team that made the tools. There wasn't anything special or wasn't the name of an engine. They just put their name on it, and it just happened to show up on Wikipedia. Who did that? Who put that on there? I want to know. But the code reuse went back much deeper than just a single game. I remember using slew mode inside of all the games we used to rig shots and trailers. Now, slew mode was this basic camera movement for flying the camera around and viewing things that might be out of reach for the player. So when I asked somebody in the Core Technology Group to do improvements to it, they actually let me know that slew mode had not been touched since the first game the studio put out, Descent.
What? You're telling me that Saints Row was built on the Descent engine?
Now go watch my GDC talk about it.
Oh, that sounds interesting. For, $600 for Vault Access? No. I'm not falling for some Tai Lopez looking human asking for money on the internet.
Dude, it's so long ago, it's in the free section now.
I'd believe you if you had a Lambo.
I've got one of these.
No, seriously, where's the Lambo?
Look, I'm trying to make a point about why developers never delete code. Just look at this example on Fallout 3. Instead of coding up some trains, some designer just made a hat worn by an NPC. Weird stuff. This is why game programmers never delete code. With so many designers and programmers working on games these days, you never know who's referencing the routine or system that you may think nobody's using.
Codeception!
Deleting code hardly saves any space. And it's just better leaving that excess code behind than finding out you broke something at the 11th hour. This is why hackers and modders are always seeming to dig up unused parts in a game. There's a whole website dedicated to finds like this called the Cutting Room Floor. If you want to see what's left behind in some of your favorite games, now you know where to go. Over the years, game studios started to catch on to the value that they were building after they had built so many systems and so many features into all of their previous games. That game code eventually turns into a viable asset that can be licensed to other up-and-coming game studios if taken care of correctly. The folks at id Software saw this opportunity in the early 90s and licensed out their code for other game developers to create new games for them. But the business model was really young at this time, and they didn't want to let the floodgates open to customers banging on their door for support. We couldn't just open up Google and be like, how do I make Doom level, for another decade? So id couldn't just put this on the shelf and sell it to consumers. They needed a test subject to see if this would be a viable business model for them. id Software would choose Raven Software as their first studio to work with. Raven did some work with the Wolfenstein code to create Shadowcaster, a hybrid RPG FPS, and later would work with Doom's code base to make the popular fantasy shooter Heretic. It also helped that they were down the street from id Software, so if they had any questions, they're just gonna be all just like, hey, yo, Romero, tell me how this thing on this next machine works and how to make a pentagram on the floor. I'm pretty sure that's exactly how they sounded at Raven. I would imagine that id Software learned as soon as code leaves your studio, you're on the hook for support. And that's why the first licensees of their game code were based nearby in Dallas, Texas.
Wait, Chex Quest was made in St. Paul, Minnesota. What are you trying to pull here?
And that's why nobody plays the game today.
I hope you get roasted in the comments.
Many developers would come up with their own shooters in the early 90s, and folks in the media would refer to them as Doom clones, somehow signifying that they were inferior. And don't get me wrong, some of these games were good, but a lot of these games were just really bad back in the day. They just lacked the polish, the art style, the speed, all those magical things that Doom had. Folks in the media would drive this frenzy even further, pointing to the technological superiority of Doom, and gamers started associating the technology and the programming behind the game's success while minimizing things like content, level design, and sound elements that make the entire package so delightful even to this day. You would even see game boxes proudly proclaiming that they use the Doom or the Quake engine as a marketing point. And many would try to compete with the masters of Doom, but in my opinion, id Software would not be in a technological fair fight until Unreal came out in 1998. Finally, a company with the artists, designers, and audio folks to back it all up and deliver a package that started turning heads. As Unreal won awards and gained notoriety at LAN parties, gamers started to get excited about the next game coming from Epic. Of course, they followed this up with Unreal Tournament, a multiplayer-focused package, and that would cement Epic's production schedule into making Unreal games until 2006's release of Gears of War.
That's a lot of Nally healing fruit. You get it? You eat the fruit, and then you get healed. Someone slapped my knee. My arms are too short.
By this point, the budgets and time needed to make games began to ratchet up in the 7th generation of consoles. Most of these budgets came through with the increased time developers needed to spend to create these increasingly complex assets to look like a 7th generation game. But E3, GDC, and Gamescom happens every year, and these companies were still on a cadence of wanting to show off something new and shiny. It's now 2005, and Epic is not ready to show off their new IP, Gears of War, yet. So they choose to show off just their technology. No game. Just a tech demo for partners like Xbox and PlayStation. But this made sense because Epic had already been licensing the Unreal Engine, just like id, and now they wanted to drum up new business for licensing their new technology for 7th generation consoles. But this would have knock-on effects that Epic probably wasn't expecting. Now, gaming publications aimed at consumers are writing about the Unreal Engine and not Epic's next game. This, to me, is the point where the term game engine goes mainstream. Game companies simply learned that they could build hype for an upcoming game even when they were too far away from a proper unveiling, as long as your technology was awesome. In 2014, Epic would announce that they're making the Unreal Engine available to the public just for a monthly subscription of $19. While id Software may have been able to choose which partners got their technology, this was a disruptive step for the entire industry where Epic let Joe Indy dance upon the game engine's dance floor to see what would break. The first thing that would break would be this sick beat. And then the second thing that would break would be the price. The Unreal Engine would go free to play, only charging you when you make money. That's awesome!
Lay that funky music, chicken.
Do you know about this? Yeah, it's all supposed to be a little unreal.
Every time Epic showed off technology, it was something that was always cutting edge and has never been done in real time in a game before. With the upcoming Unreal Engine 5, Epic has a new technology called Nanite, which allows you to load up movie quality assets with hundreds of millions of triangles and put them on the screen in real time. This is truly impressive technology and a huge leap in graphical fidelity. But at the end of the day, these are just tools created by technical groups inside of game studios. So if the Unreal Engine is so great, why hasn't everybody switched over?
Yeah, no, it's money, right?
Calm down, buddy. Even if your game code isn't optimized to put unlimited triangles on the screen, that doesn't mean that you still can't be successful.
World premiere. Get ready, chickens. Oh, what is this? Is this a Kingdom Hearts game? No, it's a sequel to One Triangle Game. 10 out of 10. I haven't cried this much since Spider-Man 3.
Whenever you're making a game, you're always making trade-offs based off the limited resources like RAM, CPU, GPU, and even disk access speed. For example, you'll notice that many open world games don't use the Unreal Engine. And in fact, several studios I've consulted with have tried to make the leap to the Unreal Engine, only to find out that though the tool sets are more polished, they would need to rebuild major portions of their streaming code of their game. You know, the parts that make an open world game open world. Though, Epic has recently in 2021 shown an impressive, dense open world in the Matrix Awakens demo using Unreal Engine 5, so we'll see how long it takes before many open world games are using Unreal 5. But you might say, well, what about Nanite? What about it? How will games ever compete with unlimited detail? Well, building that detail still takes hundreds or even thousands of artists working on a game for years to hit the insanely high quality bar that gamers are going to ask for. Joe Indy is not going to be able to make games that look that good. But Joe Indy competes with innovative gameplay systems that are not included in the Unreal Engine to make their game stand out. For example, the core technology group back at Volition built a destruction system in Red Faction Guerrilla that nobody copied because 1, nobody thought it would even be possible to do on an Xbox 360, but 2, we spend a majority of our CPU resources on calculating these physics. Those limitations changed the type of game that we had to make. Oh, and by the way, Red Faction Guerrilla was forked off of old Saints Row code at some point in the past. Did we say that Red Faction was built using the Saints Row engine? Hell no, that would have been really confusing. So just keep that in mind, because what marketing guys say and what the actual programmers are doing might be two different things. But Red Faction Guerrilla now had a unique feature that nobody had, full procedural destruction. And I think that's okay. Having the same game tools in front of every game developer would mean having the same restrictions. The same restrictions would force developers down a path of games that are even more similar than they are today. Tools make the game. But we'll see how long it takes before open world games start ditching their own tech and using Unreal 5. But I'd like to hear what you think. Have you fallen victim to the marketing hype train over game engines? Don't lie to me, man. I've fallen for it before, come on. Or are you just some sort of Chad gamer looking for unique gameplay elements?
Should I do that again?
That was okay, but
Was that on the money? Was that good? Was that good?
try it again.
No?
Faster, with more intensity.
Faster, more intensity?
Okay, let's
What kind of
go
crazy...
again from the top.
Fine. This is not a union shoot.
Right on
We're
the
gonna move up
set.
to union here pretty soon, and then we'll be done with all these losers.
Amaze me.
Yally, healing fruit.